Hey.
What you want to say about the baby?
I've never, ever heard of anything so horrific. There's some very harsh words that I would like to use about Javeayah and Michelle, but I will not do that. And I will not do that to protect and maintain the integrity of this case. But I will tell you this, I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm on the way to you. Just to confirm, where was she in the house when you saw her last?
No, she wasn't in the house, ma'am. She been playing outside today. And
Okay.
she asked me, can she play for a little bit more before it got dark, and I said yes. And I literally, her bath water is in the tub, ran, and dinner is cooking, and I came out here to get her, and I can't even find her.
She's been playing outside today. That's Javeayah Harris on the phone with a 911 dispatcher just before 9 at night on June 30th. She says her daughter asked to stay outside a little longer before it got dark. She says yes. She says her daughter's bathwater's already running. Dinner's on the stove. I came out here to get her and I can't even find her. That call set off one of the largest missing child searches South Carolina has seen in years. 200 officers, the FBI, helicopters, drones, canine units, 5,000 acres of Aiken County searched in brutal heat. Everyone who answered that call believed the same thing. Javeayah Harris told the dispatcher that night that a 4-year-old girl named Javeayah had wandered off from her own backyard sometime after dark and needed to be found. The dispatcher asked the kind of routine questions meant to help a search team narrow down where a small child might have gone, whether she had any health conditions, whether there was water nearby she might have wandered toward. Harris answered each one. None of the answers ended up mattering, because the real question, whether Javeayah was actually missing that night at all, was never asked, and nobody had any reason yet to ask it. We're going to tell you what actually happened, but we're going to tell it the way investigators pieced it together, slowly and mostly against the family's own account, not with it, because that's the part of this case that should disturb you most. Not just what happened to Javeayah. How long it took anyone to learn the 911 call itself wasn't true. Javeayah Harris was 4. Pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, Crocs, beads braided into her hair. The kind of last-scene description that's almost unbearable to read once you know how this ends. Within hours of that 911 call, this stopped being a 2-deputy search. The FBI sent agents, including its Behavioral Analysis Unit and Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team. State police joined. Sheriffs from 4 neighboring counties sent help. Nobody asked them to send. By July 1st, less than 24 hours in, the operation had already expanded to include South Carolina's Law Enforcement Division, the State Highway Patrol, and multiple other agencies working the same case simultaneously. By day 4, they'd covered 5,000 acres. A local church opened its doors around the clock, so search crews could get water and air conditioning in triple-digit heat. On July 2nd, the sheriff's office held a briefing specifically to address concerns from the community, a sign of how much public attention this case had already drawn, less than 48 hours after that first 911 call. This is what a community does when it believes a 4-year-old might still be found. Hundreds of people who never met Javeayah showed up anyway, at vigils at the search command post outside her family's home, where a memorial of balloons and candles grew night after night. One woman who came to light a candle, a search volunteer named Nixon, said something that stayed with a lot of people since, that she believes Javeayah hears the prayers, that she sees the candles being lit for her. That's what everyone believed they were doing. Searching for a little girl who was still out there somewhere, waiting. They weren't. 4 days into the search, something changed. Deputies went back to the family's home on Hillsborough Street, this time with the coroner's office alongside them. They spent hours searching the woods behind the house, not the wide search grid everyone had been combing for days, but that specific property. Again, think about what that means, tactically. Search teams don't send a coroner's office back to a property they've already cleared unless something has shifted their thinking entirely, from looking for a lost child to looking for evidence of what happened to one. Nobody explained why publicly. Not yet. What we now know, from arrest warrants released days later, is that investigators had already begun to believe something the public didn't know yet. That Javeayah's injuries neither parent ever sought medical treatment for, had happened weeks earlier. Specifically, warrants say, in early June. Early June. The 911 call was made June 30th. Sit with that gap for a second, because it's the entire shape of this case. If investigators are right, there was nothing to search for by the time hundreds of people started searching. The child everyone believed had just wandered off had already been gone for close to a month. The warrants describe both parents showing what they call extreme indifference to human life. That's not narration. That's the legal language investigators used, in writing, to describe why they were pursuing homicide charges, not a missing child case gone wrong, but something that had already happened long before anyone dialed 911. It's worth understanding what a phrase like that actually requires legally. Prosecutors don't reach for language like extreme indifference to human life casually. It's a specific standard, describing conduct beyond negligence, beyond an accident that was mishandled afterward. It's the language used when investigators believe someone knew a child needed help and chose not to provide it. One more detail from that call deserves mention, carefully. When the dispatcher asked if Javeayah had any health conditions, Herring mentioned autism. The warrants note no formal diagnosis had ever been made. We're including that only because it's part of the official record, not to suggest it explains anything that happened. It doesn't. On July 4th, 4 days after that 911 call, Sheriff Marty Sawyer stood in front of the cameras to say something he later called the hardest announcement of his 37-year career. Javeayah, he said, was dead. And the investigation now supported something devastating. She'd likely been gone for at least a month already. The search the public had been watching for 4 days had never had a chance of finding her alive. Before he announced the arrests, Sawyer took a moment to thank the agencies and volunteers who'd spent 4 days searching in brutal heat, the FBI, state police, 4 neighboring counties' sheriffs, the local church that had opened its doors as a relief station. Every one of them had shown up believing they might still find her alive. He had to tell them, in the same breath, that they hadn't been searching for a missing child. They'd been searching for a body that had already been hidden for weeks. That same day, both parents were arrested. Javeayah Harris and Michelle Herring, homicide by child abuse, for both of them. Herring, additionally, for filing a false police report. Not one parent. Both. Her body still hadn't been found. I want to pause on something here, because it's easy to let this become just a sequence of facts. For 4 days, hundreds of strangers searched in dangerous heat, believing every single hour mattered. It didn't. Not because they failed, but because the story they were searching inside of was already false before it started. That's not just a tragedy. That's a specific kind of cruelty, aimed at an entire community that showed up in good faith. In the days after the arrests, search resources quietly shifted about 80 miles away to Fairfield County to Cedar Creek Reservoir, also called Stumpy Pond. On July 9th, Sheriff Sawyer confirmed it. Investigators had recovered human remains there. DNA testing confirmed what the whole state had feared: they belonged to Javeayah. Investigators also said something else, carefully, and we're going to handle it the same way, that corrosive chemicals had been used in how her remains were disposed of. We're not going to describe that further. It's not necessary, and Javeayah deserves better than to have that detail turned into spectacle. What is necessary to report? Additional charges followed immediately. Destruction and desecration of human remains filed against both parents, on top of the homicide charges already in place. Both were denied bond, again this time at hearings where neither parent had an attorney present. Both requested public defenders. Both were denied. A magistrate judge ruled their income, on paper, was too high to qualify, even though neither could clearly answer basic questions about how much they actually earned. Here's what that actually looked like in the courtroom. Javeayah Harris told the judge he worked for a shipping company, but when asked directly how much he earned weekly, he struggled to answer. Michelle Herring said she was paid bi-weekly, roughly $1,300 per pay period, working for a customer service company. The judge ruled that income disqualified both of them from a court-appointed attorney, meaning two people facing the most serious charge in South Carolina's criminal code are, for now, navigating their own defense without one. Because both face homicide charges, the magistrate judge who heard their initial cases didn't even have the authority to set bond. Both cases were automatically referred to circuit court, where a judge with that authority will eventually decide whether either of them can be released before trial. Their cases were referred to circuit court. Herring's next appearance is set for September 18th. Harris's September 19th. One more fact belongs in this update, and we want to be careful and precise about it. At the time of her arrest, Michelle Herring was 39 weeks pregnant. She has since given birth. That child is now in the custody of South Carolina's Department of Social Services. We're not going to speculate about that child's future or turn it into a cliffhanger. We're reporting it because it's true, because it's part of the public record, and because it's the clearest possible sign that the systems meant to protect children are now actively involved in real time for the sibling Javeayah never got to meet. Across social media, the reaction to this case has been enormous and mostly unusually unified for a case that's been discussed this widely. One woman wrote something simple that a lot of people seem to feel the same way about. That baby didn't deserve to be done the way they did her. That's not a legal finding. It's not evidence. It's just what an entire community has been saying to each other, out loud, for 2 weeks now. Both parents remain in custody, without bond, facing homicide by child abuse, destruction, and desecration of human remains, and in Herring's case, the original false police report charge. Their circuit court appearances are still 2 months out. What hasn't changed since our first video on this case? Javeayah was 4. She liked pink. She liked Minnie Mouse. For a month before anyone was told she was even missing, she was already gone. And it took a false 911 call, a 4-day search, and hundreds of exhausted volunteers to even begin uncovering that. This case will move slowly now, through pretrial hearings that likely won't happen until fall. We'll be back the moment there's something real to report, not before. Say her name. Javeayah.